remember waking up in my parents' bed. I must have fallen asleep on the couch downstairs and been carried up to bed, but all I remember is laying there, alone. The hall light was on, and I heard the TV on downstairs. So, I thought my parents were still down there watching TV, so I just enjoyed the huge bed to myself, their heavy, thick duvet covering me, a freshly made bed I could stretch out in. I was 8 years old, but there was a lump in the bed next to me, and it shifted a bit as I stretched out. I remember it moving. I just thought it was the dog, so I moved my little toes towards it under the covers, but when they reached the lump, it was nothing but cold, like ice against the sole of my foot. I snatched it back quickly. Whatever was making the lump in the bed slid off the other side. I heard nothing, but I felt the cover being pulled as it moved, and I was frozen. What was in the bed with me? And does it know that I'm aware? I lay there for an eternity, ears open, and my breathing light, trying to hear whatever it was on the floor. Or was it under the bed? Was it waiting for me to move? I was so quiet I could hear the TV clearly now. There was no show on, just a high-pitched ringing. The TV channel had ended for the night, so why were my parents not in bed? I sat up in bed, slowly, quietly, trying to disturb the huge bed as little as possible. I pulled the covers away so I could make the jump from the bed to the light of the hall. If I could run downstairs and get my parents, I could make it. So, I stood on the bed, and I jumped. I ran so fast down the stairs. I ran into the living room, and I saw them. My parents were frozen, staring at the TV, eyes open, mouths open, frozen, and I could feel it behind me, at the top of the stairs. I could feel it looking at me. I turned around and all I could see was its huge black glass eyes, and all I could hear was the TV. When I woke up, I was outside my house. My parents just thought I was sleepwalking, but they don't remember putting me to bed though. Probably not what the threat is aimed at, but I always thought it was interesting that there's just big-ass tree-dwelling spiders in India and Pakistan, and nobody talks about it. I lived on the Pakistan-Indian border for a couple years as a missionary. There was a humongous web strung up between two trees that had a dead child all wrapped up. The kid had been climbing trees and became entangled, and when the locals cut him down, they said his insides were like soup, like he was just a huge flesh bag full of liquid. I did see them cut him out of the webs, and when they picked him up, his eyes were like backwards, if that makes sense. Like, not that the back of his eyes were in the front, but that his eyes were drooping inward, as opposed to being flush with the face. When they sat him upright, I guess it broke the surface tension, and his eyes just sort of melted out of the sockets. If you've ever seen a big glob of fat in a roast pan or something, it kind of looked like that. Like greasy, chunky jelly. It was honestly horrible. The locals did not bother calling the police because the police there were, honestly, completely unhelpful. You had to bribe them to get them to do anything, and even then, they would only halfway try. So, they know about it. They just kind of shrug and say, "Oh, a big spider got him," and they leave it at that. Nobody thinks it's strange or anything. Apparently it's really reclusive, and they usually don't see it. When I asked how big it actually is, the guy I was talking to just spread his arms as far as they go. So I'm gonna say like 4 feet in diameter, maybe 3, I don't know. Just hold your arms out lengthwise, then vertical, and you'll have as much info as I have. The Black Stickman Phenomenon. The Black Stickman is a paranormal being that is described as a 2-dimensional silhouette resembling a child's stick figure. It is void of facial features, clothing, or any discernible details, which makes encounters with it unsettling. Witnesses have described the stickman as having a loping gait, and some have even claimed that it was wearing a top hat. Why do we never see stickman threads on X? Fuck all the hat man, shadow people, shapeshifter stories. The stickman creeps me out more than anything. Well, almost more than the faceless mannequin people. The earliest reports go back to the 1990s, so this phenomenon might have actually inspired the Enderman. I had a nightmare about the stickman once, although it did have a face. There was me, my little brother, or sister, as children, and my mother and father who were discussing something at the table. I was looking out the window, and my little brother or sister notices a very thin stick figure on the horizon, and so do I. Next, the stick figure waves at me, and for some reason, I wave back at it. Next, it comes running to our house in a very weird way. It must have been huge, and I can see some sort of smiling face that it has, and it's looking at me. The whole figure is blacker than black somehow. It's getting closer and closer, until it's getting past our house, and I can't see it anymore. It's as big as the house is, and I'm looking down on it, and it up to me. Next, I'm looking into the living room, where everyone is, into the door frame leading into another room. I see the stick figure looking at me, and then coming towards me. I try to scream, but my body does nothing. Only with great effort that I can. But then, the stick figure is gone, and no one sees anything, and they all think I'm crazy. And then, I woke up. They're also known as stick Indians, and are much older than the 90s. They like to lure people into the woods, and talking about them is considered a taboo. One famous Native American leader saw them in a cave in the 1800s. Funny how these are way scarier than, say, Bigfoot or other cryptids. You can rationalize the existence of the latter as undiscovered species, mutations, experiments, and etc. Even the Hat Man and shadow beings can be explained away as just mere hallucinations. But how the fuck do you explain a two-dimensional pitch-black being gliding around while you're completely sober and awake? That's far scarier than any ghost or undiscovered force chimp. Only aliens or true bizarre experiences like the Sandown Clown reach that level of horror. Be me, 24-year-old third shift embalmer for Embalming Trade Service. I did the work that other funeral homes didn't feel like doing. Autopsies, car wrecks, organ donors, which is the most messed up stuff, and children, which are pertinent to this story. Work from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., but most days, much more. It's a small company, only 3 other guys plus the owner, to cover all of central Illinois. Worked a lot since you can't just leave dead people for too long, and when the calls come, we had to go. Often worked long shifts, 20 plus hours were typical. Didn't sleep much, or at all, for days at a time. One night, we had to go get more embalming fluid, which was up in a storage compartment in an attic of an old funeral home. On hour 20 plus for the day, tired as hell. Slowly walk up steps with my head down, glance up, and freeze. A boy is standing at the top of the steps. Nearly fall back, but I catch myself on the rail. Look back. Boy is gone. Decide to make coffee instead, and wait for colleague to return from call. I just chalk it up to sleep deprivation, and I tell colleague about it. He says he's seen him too. Hated having to get more fluid at that place. Here's more. Busy day as always. Prep room of main facility has 3 embalming tables. Using all 3 tables to embalm 3 people at the same time. I'm a very good embalmer, probably one of the best in the state. I never counted, but I've probably embalmed over 10,000 people since I began over a decade ago. I'm used to jumping back and forth between people. One guy's a scraggly old man in his 70s, and the family asked that I didn't take his pendant off. It's some sort of Catholic saint. Not wanting to get blood and nasty fluid all over it, I just took it off and began embalming him. I jumped to the other person. Pendant guy is behind me. A few seconds later, I hear a growl of sorts from directly behind me. Sometimes, the dead expel gases or air trapped in their lungs when they're pumped full of the embalming liquid. I look back, and his head is tilted towards me, and his eyes are open. The barbed eye caps that we put in their eyes to keep them closed are on his chest. I freak the hell out. I think it's just my long hours and perhaps, I forgot to close his eyes with the caps. I adjust him back. I drain out clotted blood, and I go back to embalming the other 2. Same growl as before, and I nearly piss myself when I turn around to see his head tilted toward me again. The both eyes are open, but the caps are still in. Alright, to hell with it. I put the pendant back on him, and if it gets covered in blood, oh well. He never does it again after that. Get a house call around 2 a.m. The descendant is a diminutive woman in her 30s. She's got that disease where you look like a child, and she is no more than 3 feet tall. Family, obviously, loves the hell out of her, and everyone is very upset at her passing. They tell me that she was a prankster and loved playing jokes on people. Seemed like a very special kind of person despite her disease. Every house call, I took my guy Jay with me. Jay was in his 70s. He was a Vietnam vet, lovable, but stern, God-fearing brother in Christ. Solid dude was still helping me carry 300-pound people up flights of stairs. The man was tough as nails. We get the little lady back to the funeral home, get her prepped for embalming. Jay always says a little prayer before he moved the body. As he prays, the old boombox from the 80s clicks on at full blast. It's the type you had to flip a big switch up to turn it on, and it makes an audible click when it does. We hear that click, and Neil Young's Rocking in the Free World blasts through the radio. We both look at each other like, what the fuck? I turn off the stereo. We lift the little lady onto the embalming table, and the radio clicks on again. Jay just says, "Anon, have a good night," and beelines for the door. Nothing else happened while I embalmed her. I never could explain that, and Jay never mentioned it again. This sounds like a horrible job. I would never work such job. I do hear weird stories about dead people moving, like when my grandmother died. One of my relatives was swearing that she saw her move her hands when she was sitting next to her. We even got scared that she might still be alive. Be at it again. Embalming an old woman in her 70s. Pink stripe through white spiky haircut. Huge, fake, saggy breasts. They look like grapefruits hanging in old gym socks. Fucked up tattoos of naked devil pinup girls above her crotch, and among other things. Had on these hot pink trimmed leopard print panties. Nipples and crotch pierced. Obviously a fun granny. When you're embalmed, you get rock solid, and I mean you cannot move a limb out of the position that I was embalmed in. Set Granny's elbows up on blocks, with hands clasped at her midsection. Walk past her to get supplies, and her hand swings off the elbow block and smacks me in the butt. I figured I hadn't set her arms right, so I position her once again. I grab some fluid and my instruments, and I walk past, and whop, once again, she slaps my ass. This cheeky old broad. I position her again, and I swear, it happens one more time, and I swear she smiled a little. So yeah, I was molested by a dead woman. Visiting family in rural West Virginia. House is run down, but in the lived-in way, not the crack house way. Uncle decides we should camp a short distance from the house. Still in the woods because this thing is surrounded by a sea of trees. We set up a small campsite and get a fire going. Feels cozy, man. .jpg. It's night. Uncle, aunt, uncle's wife, and my dad decide to sleep outdoors near the campsite. I decide to stick around too. It's about 1 a.m. I can't remember 100%, but it was pretty dark out, and the only light was from the moon and my phone's flashlight. Really need to piss. Get out of my tent, wander a bit from camp to find a nice bush, unzip my pants and get to watering the flowers. I notice some movement out of the corner of my eye. I shoot my head around, panicked that a bear or something had just caught me with my dick out. Almost shit myself as I notice a figure duck behind a tree. This was all low light, but from the glance I got, it looked like the figure was wearing some kind of robe or gown. I zip up my pants immediately, dick burning because I haven't finished pissing. Turn on my phone's flashlight and grab my pocket knife, trying to be macho. Plus, my family were pretty close. Walk around tree, waving around my phone. Nothing. Honestly, I'm even more creeped out. I should note that crickets out here are deafening, especially in the middle of the night. But it was completely fucking silent. All I could hear was leaves and sticks crunching with every step I made back to the campsite. As I'm walking back, I notice something when I step on a pretty thick branch, and it snaps. I hear the exact sound about 20-ish feet behind me, and then again, same distance to my right, ditto to my left. Flight or fight kicks in, and I fucking bolt like a deer that just heard a gunshot. Dad is already out of his tent, campfire's up, and he's very clearly tense about something. He tells me to just go back to the house. Everyone else gets out of their tents too. Uncle stays behind, not getting any sleep tonight. Skip ahead an hour or so. Dad comes back into the house with Uncle. Uncle is pale as a sheet. Dad seems really frustrated. I ask him what it was. According to my dad, they caught a few guys middle-aged, walking through the woods. They bolted at the sight of my dad and uncle. No idea what they were doing there, but a few of them dropped some things. My face went. It was a knife, duct tape, and some kind of syringe. We weren't really ever able to report it to the local police or anything, and I didn't live with my extended family at the time, but weird shit involving these robed fucks happened for the rest of the year, or 2010. It was mostly just my family seeing them walking around the woods at night and early morning. Eventually, they fucked off after my uncle brought a rifle and started hunting on his property. Hey guys, I just went down a rabbit hole. I think I found something very paranormal. I'm going to tell you guys about a place in Pennsylvania, near the Poconos. My girlfriend's mom is very good friends with this woman who owns like 200 acres of land. She opened a summer camp and let my girlfriend go there for free. I'll tell you some stories about the camp, and maybe post some articles and shit about those stories. Be my girlfriend, 12 years old. Your girlfriend's 12 years old. In summer camp, wake up for no reason at the ass crack of dawn. Her friend woke her up. Another girl, around 12 years old, says her parents are here and that they're going down to the lake. She walks outside the cabin, and everyone is sleeping. Girl and her parents are waiting outside. They all walk together outside the boundaries of the camp. They walk through the giant gate at the entrance, walk through the woods. She remembers walking with the family all the way to a lake. Her memory is hazy, but somehow, she ends up back at the camp. Assume that she walked back as well. She gets back, and there's police everywhere. Apparently, she was gone for half the day. They called the cops and started a search. They even called her mom to tell her that they lost her. Everyone is asking where the fuck she went. She explains that she went with the family and the girl to the lake. Everyone is confused as fuck. Turns out, there was no family. There wasn't even that girl that she was friends with. No one can figure out what the fuck happened. So, they just pretend it didn't happen. The camp has been shut down, and I'll explain why in the next story. Okay, so, here's where things get spooky as fuck. Family owns the camp and the property. Grandma of that family pretty much lives on the campgrounds. Daughter of woman who owns the property lives in a town nearby, but spends every summer there at camp. The grandma always spoke about how the place has bad energy and bad vibes, etc. One night, something insane happens. The daughter, who's 17, beautiful, and rich as fuck, kills herself. Literally shoots herself in the head while laying down in her cabin bed. The cabins have maybe 10 bunk beds, each full of kids. No one knows why the fuck she did it, or how she even got the gun. Apparently, it was a gun for security that was locked up in the admin building. Apparently, word is, between family and close friends, is that she was hearing voices that would try to convince her to go hurt herself. After this incident, they shut down the camp. The parents took the loss really hard, and I'm pretty sure they sold the land as well. And from the article to the suicide, it says, if the girl's death is ruled a suicide, it would be the 5th suicide of a high school student in less than 2 years in Monroe County. 3 other Pocono Mountain students died in a 6-week period between September and October 2004, and a Pleasant Valley student died in December 2005. That's an insane amount of suicides for one small high school. Anyways, I have one more story. I found proof of this before, but I'm on my phone now, and I don't feel like looking for it right now, but if you search for it, you will probably find it. I found it in some public records or some shit. But apparently in the 70s or 80s, on that land, a whole fucking house burned down. The family, including the children, died. On top of that, my girlfriend said she used to dig in the dirt and would find shit like rings, random ass shit that you would maybe find in a house. And I wonder if it belonged to that family. Maybe that's why they picked her. Also, I found that every owner of the property had either the family die or a family member die. And I think it's way too coincidental that, of all the fucking kids that camp had, it was the owner's daughter that got the worst of it. Just saying. This area is very spooky and I think it warrants some looking into. I plan to look through more public records about its previous owners. And one more thing. This is a huge update. I still cannot find the exact camp location, but it's off of something called Upper Cease Hill Road in Canadensis or some shit like that. Anyways, look this place up. For some reason, there's strange fires and murder in this small area. Check this article out. Caretaker randomly murders elderly patient by setting the fucking house on fire. The more I look into the area, the more strange suicides and murders I find that have no motivation at all. OP here. Mega update. The property's been found. I'm definitely doing a ghost hunt. My girlfriend doesn't want me to go. She's genuinely scared, but she's going on a family trip either next week or the week after. I live in Brooklyn, so fuck it. It's like a 3-hour drive. I'm heading out with my phone and a portable charger to record some shit. I can easily hop the gate, and since the daughter and heroed in the bed, I'm curious to see if they cleaned up the bloodstains. Now that we know the exact location, I can do digging into the lore of this land. So check this out. Apparently, right near the campgrounds in Canadensis, is this huge-ass abandoned resort called the Inn at Buck Falls Hill or something. And in this article, we found this. The Inn at Buck Hill Falls is a subject of ancient legend. Native American tribes would not venture into the area that it was built on, as it was populated with evil spirits. Modern psychics and spiritualists believe the portions of the East Wing were built directly on ley lines, and the East Room is built directly where these ley lines converge, marking a spot of dark energy. Although various murders occurred at the hotel throughout the years, it's difficult to determine how many and where they occurred due to inconsistent record keeping and many fabricated hoaxes. The MTV show Fear fabricated at least 73 different murder accusations for their episode at Buck Hill Inn, and also made up multiple other stories and legends. Because of this, we will never know the exact tragedies that occurred at the hotel. It is known that the hotel was once a popular meeting for mob activity. Something is up with this fucking land. OP here. Gears together on my way to this camp. We'll post update upon arrival. I dressed my best to talk to landowners. Entomology degree and research documents in hand. We'll tell them that I'm conducting a boar population study, with light trapping occurring at night. We'll pay them off to set up camp tonight. Stay tuned. And this was the last that we ever heard or saw from OP.